So unfortunately, we have some concerning climate news to bring to you all, as usual. Um, I always do that, you guys. I'm still learning StreamYard. How many years in here? Okay. This is a tweet thread by Ben C. at ClimateBen on Twitter if you guys want to give him a follow. Breaking. Scientists shocked by highest average temperature on record over Europe in 2022 for both August and summer. Summer defined as June through August, by substantial margins. He shows a couple of charts here that I want to bring up for you. So this is looking at long-term temperature trends going back to 1880. You can see here one is Europe, one is Eastern China, one is North America, and one is extratropical Northern Hemisphere land. And they are all following exactly the same pattern going back 140 years. So this is not some people like to say, well, yeah, it was hot this summer, but, treat that as some sort of one-off. We see here that the concerns of climate scientists are the long-term trend, not the specific day or year in question, right? And, I mean, it's just, look at that trend. What can I say? Absolutely terrifying. Very concerning. And the other one here that he shares is about tipping elements. And you can see here the likelihood that we reach tipping points is increasing over time here. And that you see the year. This is actually looking back about 20,000 years. So long-term trends going in the wrong direction. And here he posts a screenshot of the start of an article. Exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius, global warming could trigger multiple climate tipping points. And for those who don't understand tipping points, I want to be clear, I'm not a climate scientist or any sort of scientist, but essentially, Earth systems maintain certain standards, the temperature and things like this. But if you reach certain points, then the cycles will start to work against you. In other words, this is how the greenhouse effect works, right? You reach a tipping point, and then the Earth's systems, Earth's natural cycles and systems start to work against you in a vicious cycle. So we need to correct this before we start to hit a bunch of those tipping points, or we will not only be fighting the current issues that we're fighting, like the political issues of trying to get off our addiction of oil and fossil fuels, but we will add to are the entities that we have to combat. We will be adding Earth itself to that group, and suddenly the planet will also be fighting against us. So this is, I say this every time, the most existential issue that we face. It is incredible to me that this does not get more attention, even in leftist circles. And I encourage everybody to take the climate crisis seriously and to do whatever you can to try to combat it. I have a clip here from David Sirota. Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. I have a piece here to show you really quick. Also, David Sirota and The Lever. Very much encourage you to follow them if you are not following them already. This is, again, The Lever. It's by Julia Rock, David Sirota, and Andrew Perez. Quick shameless plug. If you missed my interview with Andrew, go back and find it on Real Progress in Action, talking about the largest donation in political history. They all do fantastic journalism over at The Lever. I really encourage you to check out their work. This piece is titled, Most Dems Mum on Blocking Manchin's Pipeline Deal. Many lawmakers are criticizing the Schumer-Manchin climate bomb, but only a few have pledged to do what may be necessary to stop it. As vast swaths of the country are being battered by climate-intensified droughts and heat waves, Senator Bernie Sanders just threw a wrench into Democrats' reported plans to fast-track approval of oil and gas pipelines as part of an unrelated spending bill. On Thursday, he pledged to vote against the proposal, even if it is included in legislation required to avert a partial government shutdown. The open question now is whether enough other Democrats will use their power to block, rather than merely complain about, a pipeline deal that environmental groups say could detonate a climate bomb amid the intensifying ecological crisis. Soon after Sanders' announcement, one Democrat, Representative Khanna, told The Lever that he would similarly vote no on a spending bill if it includes the pipeline measure. However, House progressives have not committed to providing a block of no votes in the lower chamber. The pipeline deal was originally negotiated by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Joe Manchin, who are respectively Congress's top recipients of fossil fuel and utilities industry campaign cash. One utility and pipeline company that could benefit from the deal has funneled more than $400,000 to Democrats' Senate and House campaign committees. Schumer said Wednesday he intends to attach the permitting deal to a so-called continuing resolution needed to keep the government running. Presuming that Republicans will vote against any Democratic spending bill, it would only take 5 Democratic no votes to block the legislation in the narrowly divided House. We will see if the progressives decide, or the progressive caucus, the actual like formal caucus, if they decide to provide a block on this deal. It would only take 5 of them. We shall see. I won't hold my breath, knowing the Democrats and how Chuck Schumer is handling this. Attaching it to a bill that most will view as a must-pass is, I mean, there's obvious political incentive there, and shame on Chuck for that. It's incredible, you guys, how, like, when Bernie wants to attach an amendment to something, they all just bitch and moan and absolutely lose their minds over it. Oh, Bernie dividing the caucus, this and that. Trying to tank a bill. But when the corporatists decide that they're going to hold up a must-pass bill in order to slip in some goodies for the fossil fuel industry or the banks or the corporations or the Chamber of Commerce or fill in your fucking, nefarious institution, it's always just viewed as business as usual. This will not catch much attention outside of outlets like The Lever, because mainstream and legacy outlets do not seem to care one iota about corruption in politics and about Democrats, enforcing conservative policies. So, as I mentioned earlier, I have a clip here that I want to show you guys. This is David Sirota talking about Democrats grappling with dark money. So this is kind of tangentially related to the piece we just read, where corruption is clearly guiding the policy decisions of Schumer and Manchin and the Democratic caucus at large. That dark money has played a massive role in recent election cycles, and David does a wonderful job breaking down the potential for Democrats to at least rhetorically oppose dark money going forward. So this is David Sirota on Breaking Points talking about dark money in Democratic primaries.
Now for our weekly partnership segment with The Lever, and joining us now is the man himself, David Sirota, founder of that news outlet. Great to see you, David.
Good to see you.
So you are reporting this week on kind of a moment of truth for Democrats, Democratic establishment. Let's go and put this up on the screen. You're writing, the DNC faces a vote on dark money, and as anonymous cash buys Democratic primaries, party officials will be forced to declare which side of the democracy crisis they are on. Tell us more, David.
So the DNC is having its meeting in Washington this week, and a group of Democratic National Committee members led by the state chair of Nevada will put on to the DNC members a resolution basically condemning and trying to, I guess, symbolically ban dark money. I say symbolically because it's hard to know how a resolution like this would actually be enforced. But the basic thrust of the resolution is that the DNC would go on record saying that dark money should have no place in Democratic primaries. Right now, in this last election cycle, the one that we're currently in, 60% of House Democratic primary ads have been by groups that do not disclose all of their donors. Point being that dark money is really playing a particularly huge role in not only in general elections, not only in lobbying and in campaigns around issues, but it's playing a particular role inside of Democratic primaries where Democratic Party voters are selecting their nominees for general elections. And so the DNC will face a choice about whether to actually try to move the fight against dark money forward this week at their meeting.
Well, it seems noteworthy, too, that this fight is being led by a sort of like rogue state party, the Nevada Democratic Party. Could you talk to us about the significance of that?
Sure. A few years ago, the Nevada Democratic Party had a big fight between kind of the progressive activist, somewhat Bernie Sanders aligned wing of that party, and Harry Reid, former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid's machine in Nevada. And there was basically a takeover of the party by the now chair Judith Whitmer, and so that's who is essentially leading this resolution. So it's not necessarily a kind of out and out fight between the progressive wing and the establishment wing, because I think in Nevada there's been some coming together about this. There's been some healing, reportedly, but I do think it's important to know that the origin story of this, that the more restive activist wing of the party is now bringing its concerns about dark money to the middle of the party, to the belly of the beast, if you will.
Yep.
And we should remember that the party platform, the overall DNC party platform, says that the party is against dark money, that it wants disclosure bills to disclose dark money, the 501c4 groups. And there is Democratic legislation in the Senate supported by 50 Democratic senators that would do that. Now, that legislation hasn't moved forward. And this week's vote will be a chance to see if the DNC is willing to do something more than just have a kind of soft statement in its party platform.
Well, and it does seem like the efforts on the Democratic side to rein in money in politics have kind of fizzled out. Like, to the extent that they were ever really serious about it, which I think is a big question mark to start with, you just don't hear this as a focus anymore. You see certainly sort of like the mainstream corporate side of the Democratic Party embracing dark money to get their chosen outcomes in these primaries. So it seems to me like it is an important moment for that reason as well.
I absolutely agree. And I think you're right to sense the fact that the party is kind of rhetorically on record. Again, 50 Democratic co-sponsors of, for instance, the Disclose Act, and the Republicans, they're nowhere to be found on these issues. But I think there is a sense that it is rhetoric only, that it's not necessarily real. And as you suggested, part of the reason is because a part of the party inside of the party benefits from dark money. If you are a corporate Democrat, you are pretty happy that dark money groups are dropping into congressional races to buy races for the corporate wing of the party. So getting to an end of this, or taking steps to end dark money, it's not just a battle between Democrats and Republicans. It's a battle between kind of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and a kind of an unholy alliance between the corporate wing of the Democratic Party and the Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, because let's be clear. Look, everybody understands the difficulty of like getting a constitutional amendment through and the decisions that the Supreme Court has made and the way that sort of like hamstrings efforts to get money in politics overall under control. But the Democratic Party has a lot of say and a lot of sway over how they conduct themselves. The problem for them is that if they actually took a stand against dark money, it would kneecap their ability to take out the progressive challengers that they want to be able to sideline and they want to be able to defeat.
And let's underscore one other point, because I've seen some of the reaction to this vote. Oh, well, the Democrats shouldn't have to unilaterally disarm in general elections. What's interesting about this resolution is it's talking about Democratic primaries. So if you separate out we need to, we can't unilaterally disarm in general elections, put that aside for a second. The question really is, should Democratic Party primaries, the process by which Democratic Party voters select their nominees, should that process be dominated by dark money? Some of the details that we know, and there's not all that much of it because these donations are anonymous, but we know that Republican money, the big Republican donors, have been some of the donors funding some of the Democratic Party primary spending in these races to get more conservative corporate Democrats. So again, the question here is, how should the Democratic Party itself, inside of its own process, conduct itself, and should dark money be able to decide who the party's nominees are? That's what's at issue here.
Lastly, David, I'd love it if you could just remind the audience of an example or two where dark money really played an outsized role in some of these primaries.
Oh, sure. There's the United Democracy Project. That's what the dark money group was called. It was a group that some of it discloses some of its donors, doesn't disclose all of its donors. It's funded in part by the American Israel Public Affairs Council. It has gone into races. It went into the race in New York City recently, and part of that money is not disclosed, and it's spent the progressive candidates into the ground. And an heir to the Levi Strauss empire ended up winning that primary with a huge boost of dark money, and the sources of it weren't really disclosed to voters. So I mean, we could go race by race, but this is happening all over the country. Again, with anonymous dark money putting the thumb on the scale of the primary process, so that voters are getting election communications funded anonymously that are attacking progressive candidates.
I think this is a very important and very revealing story and moment for the Democratic Party. So we will see how they ultimately respond. I think we both know how the vote is going to ultimately go down. David, great to see you. Thank you for the reporting.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, the obvious, the answer that Democrats always give to this is, well, we have to take big money because otherwise, we will be disarmed against the Republicans. And David points out here, this discussion is simply rhetorically and symbolically saying we should not allow dark money to dominate our own primaries. And even that is sparking a controversy and war within the Democratic Party, which should tell you a whole lot about what the party actually stands for. I believe they cited in that interview 60% of the money that has come into primaries this election cycle alone is from dark money groups. I'll again plug that interview I did with Andrew Perez. Seriously, you guys go watch that if you haven't read the piece on The Lever about Barry Side's donation to Leonard Leo and how Leonard Leo has essentially, orchestrated the conservative takeover of the federal judiciary, including the Supreme Court. And Andrew was one of the writers of that piece talking about the largest donation in history. It was $1.6 billion that Barry Side gave to Leonard Leo. That's the kind of donation that we're talking about here. Funneled through dark money groups and funneled through trusts and other entities that do not have to be on the public record. It's incredibly nefarious. It's obviously hidden from you for a reason, and the fact that the Democratic Party can't even agree to pull this out of its own primary process, again, really should tell you a whole heck of a lot about what that party stands for and who it is in bed with. So I just thought that clip was kind of related to the climate stuff in the sense that it is obviously corruption and capitalism that continue to perpetrate the climate emergency. So wonderful work from David. If you're not following The Lever, go to levernews.com and check out some of their fantastic work.